Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to the library tour that never ends. We've only just begun. We have at least a year of books more to go. We have finally reached shelf number 3. We have cleared away the brush and reached shelf number 3. This bookcase only has 3 shelves, so we're going to start right away. We'll start right away with 2 missed opportunities, 2 of an ongoing series of missed opportunities. This is the autobiography of James T. Kirk, with an inspirational quote on the back. It's edited by David Goodman. It has an inset of photographs like you would find in a normal autobiography. There is the little Jim Kirk from Tarsus 4. And that's what it's meant to be. This is an ongoing hardcover project from the people who have the rights to Star Trek, bringing out the official autobiographies of major Star Trek characters, which is an absolutely terrific idea that I had a full 50 years ago. And yet, this is a lifeless thing. Just lifeless. It's someone going through the Universal Studios, the Paramount Studios series Bible. Okay, what are the facts that we know about Jim Kirk? Not the speculation, not anything from the novels, or at least not the novels we don't approve of. And what is the official story of this character? And then we're just going to tell it in the most lifeless way possible, when this is not a biography of Captain Kirk. That would be one thing. If these were billed as 23rd century biographies of these major characters by other people, okay. If it's an authorized biography, I guess, maybe those things aren't any different 2 centuries from now than they are now. But an autobiography wouldn't be as boring and impersonal as this. And all of these things damningly read the same. I think there are 5 so far, and they all read exactly the same. When they're autobiographies of radically different people at radically different points in their life, there's no way they would. This is the autobiography of James T. Kirk, and for years and years, for decades, I contemplated writing a book called I, Kirk, which would have been his autobiography, but it wouldn't have read like this. It would have read like a computer wrote it. Same thing with this. This is the autobiography of Mr. Spock. And it's the same thing. It reads exactly the same as the autobiography of James Kirk. And aside from occasional charming moments, I mean, all these things, every one of them has occasional charming moments. But aside from that, there's nothing. They aren't written from the perspective of the character involved. I mean, this has, you've got the inspirational cover on the back there, and you've got computer program doctored photos. There is a young Sarek and Amanda on Vulcan, but you're stuck with continuity, including the continuity that fans hate. Keep in mind that in current Star Trek continuity that has not been retconned, that it will never be retconned, young Mr. Spock had a much smarter, much more successful, much more Vulcan, even though she's human, sister. What are you going to do with that? It's hard enough working in Cybok, but how do you work in Space Jesus to this story? As a result, all this is just someone going through the basics and writing them out in the most basic way, and it happens with every other character. It happens with Jean-Luc Picard's book. Should not read the way his does. He's a scholar, and probably the closest thing that any of these major figures come to someone with literary skill. And yet his book reads exactly the same as Catherine Janeway's, which should not read anything like that. These are great missed opportunities. I only have these 2. I don't have any of the others. Of course, I was going to have these 2, and if this series continues, this is Titan books. If they bring out, for instance, I had the Janeway book. I think I even reviewed it, but I didn't keep it. And I think I had the Jean-Luc Picard book for a minute and then got rid of it. But if Titan books were to come out with books like these for all of the great original series characters, if they were to do this for, Chief Engineer Montgomery Scott did become a captain, so if you're waiting for the rank, you could make a book by him. But I will do that. I will get those. But Sulu became a captain as well. I imagine those are 2 that they could do. It's just, it kills me, because if nobody cares about this, right? Nobody cares about the original series. Nobody cares about the Star Trek franchise. anymore since Star Trek, Discovery. So the Star Trek fans are gone anyway, but they might, so you don't have anything to lose. You're never going to put this continuity up on the big screen again. Obviously, you're not. So why not take a chance and write books that are actually interesting? Give the writer a little bit longer than 2 months to generate the text and see what they can do. Anyway, this next one does not belong here. This is David Carradine. I think he's fantastic. This is The Pleasures of the Past, which is a collection of occasional prose about the House of Windsor, British politics, just the stuff that he would do. An editor would come to you and say, can you give me 2,000 words on the Boer War, or something like that, and he would do it. And this is the collection of that. It shouldn't be here. Obviously, it should be, since they're collected book reviews, no matter what he wants to say, no matter how much his publisher wants to call them essays. There's a bookcase for that kind of stuff. It's not anywhere near here. It's just stuck here. Okay, this is Philip Ketchum. The Argosy books put together all of his serial books of Brett Walda. This is a very hokey, very intentionally cheesy historical fiction about set in the ye olden days of King Alfred the Great. It's wonderful stuff. I wonder, did they reprint the illustrations? Oh, they do. They reprint some of the illustrations in this volume. They're nothing to write home about, but this is one of. I found out only once I got this book that Argosy makes a whole bunch of books like this, where they take old, pulpy, serialized stuff and put it in a book. Although I confess, looking at their backlist, that's probably the only one I would want. Okay. All right, well, this is two by this author in the same bookcase, but they're not together. This is Popular Government, a treatise by William Howard Taft. There's my guy. I don't think I got this from the publisher. I don't think I did. No one's ever going to do anything with the writings of Taft, with the books that he wrote. No one's ever going to do anything with it, so this still has the original type font. Taft was not just an institutionalist, he was the institution of American government, so in two of its branches, and he understood the third perfectly well, and was often called upon to write, pen us a piece on representative government or the trials of democracy or whatnot, and he did. He's not the most scintillating prose stylist who's ever worked in either the Supreme Court or the White House, but I still go back to this book. I have been tempted, very much tempted. I've resisted the temptation, but I've been very tempted this week. I have no idea when you'll be watching this. These videos will be in some sort of massive playlist, so you can watch these 10 years from now. At the exact historical moment when I'm making this video, I've been, let's just say, events in the news have propelled me to want to go back and read the absolute bedrock sanity of William Howard Taft. Then we have a trade paperback of the Dragonriders of Pern. Rather stylish thing. I think I have a box set of the mass market paperbacks of Pern, but this is the first three: Dragon Flight, Dragon Quest, and White Dragon, with clean covers. So this would have been the cover of Dragonflight, but it would have had the title and stuff all over it, the heading of Valentine and whatnot. These just has these three windows of a big trade paperback of the first three Dragon Rider books that Anne McCaffrey wrote. They are widely viewed, I guess I could see that point, as the three most effective Dragon Rider books, the ones that still have, no pun intended for the Dragons of Pern, but a fire in the belly. I love them. I go back to them all the time, although I confess, when I do, I go back to the ebooks. I don't think I've opened this thing to read it in, when did I get this? I probably got this almost 20 years ago, and I don't think that I've gone back to it much since then. All right, okay. All right, this next one is historical fiction. You will never have heard of it. You will never have seen it in your bookstore. It's so much worth your time. Once Upon a Time. I love saying Once Upon a Time in library tours. It underscores how tedious I am. Once Upon a Time, for a long time, I wrote reviews for the Historical Novel Review Society. And then I became the U.S. and worldwide editor for the indie branch, meaning the self-published books, self-published and subsidy-published books. And I did that for a long time. I was still doing that when I started this channel. And that meant that a steady stream of indie books came to me. a self-published historical fiction that I would otherwise never have seen. Never. The one problem with indie books is distribution. That problem is a lot less of a problem now than it was in the olden days of 2005 because of the internet. Because it's easy and it's much easier to find these indie things, much easier to set up, alerts and whatnot, follow authors, follow their network of authors. And obviously, when you're in a position to get lots and lots of indie books like that, those of you who deal in indie books will know, I certainly deal in indie books a lot now, the quality is going to be uneven. Is that the good euphemistic way to put it? Some of these books are not good. A great many of these books are not good. I want to stress, as a firm believer, a fan of indie fiction, I want to stress that no greater percentage of it is not good than the percentage that applies to mainstream fiction. Most of mainstream fiction is garbage. Most of indie fiction is garbage. You still have to go through the process of picking through for the gems. And this is such a gem. This is Frances Hunter. And this is a historical novel that she wrote about George Rogers Clark. And also all the people around him, all of the famous expedition that was done by a kinsman, but mainly George Rogers Clark is the large center of this book. So this is the colonial era of New England. This is called The Fairest Portion of the Globe. And I love the title. I was a little bit, once I read the book, I was a little bit disappointed that the cover is so boring. There are all kinds of approaches that you could have taken, considering how good the book is. Because George Rogers Clark was the subject of another historical novel, something that did fairly well. James Alexander Thom did a book decades and decades ago called Long Knife. We'll probably encounter it on this library tour. There was a huge, stately, stuffy historical novel about this same figure. I've shown it on this channel. I hauled it once in Vermont. This is nothing like that. And the reason is because every historical novelist has to make the same choice. Once they choose their subject matter and do all their research and decide what part of their subject story they're going to write, then they have to choose how they're going to do it. How am I going to write this? Is it going to sound like contemporary fiction, only be set in the past? Are all the characters in the book going to sound like contemporary characters, only they're wearing buckskins? Or am I going to try to recreate the diction, the mind frame, the inner world? Which am I going to do? I myself maintain that both of those approaches are equally legitimate. I don't think you're necessarily just de facto writing bad historical fiction if your characters drop F-bombs. I don't think that at all. It's a much deeper question than that. Your verisimilitude to the time period that you're writing about does not need to be trapped in its rhetoric. And Frances Hunter makes the very conscious decision in this book that this is all going to be very contemporary, and it works so well. Oh my God, it works so well. There are so many great scenes in here, and so many great one-liners that fit perfectly. These characters talk in memorable prose, which you might think, if it's about historical people, Mad Anthony Wayne and whatnot, then won't they all talk in memorable prose? But no. What I mean by memorable prose is not something you put in a speech collection. It's something that comes out of Elmore Leonard, where the characters don't just sound different, but they all get in great lines. And that happens all throughout I have no idea if this is available at all. I have no idea actually what else this author wrote. I every time I do a library tour and I encounter it, I make a mental note to look and see, because this can't be an exception. What are the odds that this is an exception? This has got to be just, this author is terrific, and I'm missing her work. Then we have another piece of historical fiction. This is a slim thing by Melanie MacDonald. This is called Eromenos. Tiny little thing. This is an excellent, lyrical, extremely moving novel about the relationship between the Emperor Hadrian and Antinous, the gorgeous young man that he loved and obsessed on and probably drove to death. That relationship has been the subject of a number of novels, also a couple of pretty good history volumes on their own, but this is wonderful. Just wonderful. In fact, if I were to, have the courage of my convictions for this library tour, I would set up a bookcase for the gays. I should. They've earned it. I have enough to fill that bookcase, but I haven't done it. Then we move on to this thing. I think I got this just last year. Is that right? now a couple of years ago. This is by Jay Satterfield, and it is the world's best books. It's a study of, a history of the modern library. So a lot of you will have seen, book people know the modern library. It's a collection of reprint volumes, but it has its own, very much its own style, its own voice, its own angles. I have a lot of modern library editions. We'll be getting to them. I don't think any of my modern library editions are anywhere except in the Little Book Room, which will be our destination on this library tour, so we will get there last. But I love industry stuff like this, industry accounts like this. Then this next one is Joseph Warren Beach. This is his book, The Making of the Auden Canon. So it's about Auden's work. It's about the major and minor works as they were coming off the presses, but it's also more than that. It's about the study of how it became a canon. This is in many intriguing ways. This is a study of the handoff of an active literary career to a canonical appearance, to a canonical figure. Literary study, but really well done, really lively. Okay, this one is from 2020. We probably saw this on this channel. Do you have a pub sheet in you? No? No, this is by Jennifer Finney Boylan, and this is Good Boy, My Life in 7 Dogs. A wonderful, wonderful dog book. I remember the first time I read a book like this. It was eons ago. The book that I read is I'm thinking it was long out of print. But I read a book decades and decades ago where the author said, I measure my life by dogs. I don't measure it by years or decades. I measure it by dogs. You tell me a time in my life, a period in my life, the first thing I'm going to remember is what dogs I had and how old they were. I thought I was alone until I read that. Now I've read lots of books like that. Gary Paulson did a fantastic book just like this, only it was a fraction this length. I wish that it had been 10 times as long. And what these books are they're always the same. They're just reflections on the personalities of these people. And this is wonderful. If you are a dog person and you're always on the lookout for dog books, and you maybe realize the same as I do how few good ones there are, this is one. You should definitely get this one. Okay, then I was sent these in the mail. These are little pamphlets, Boston, England, and Boston, New England. Little study there, obviously never meant for sale. And Boston and Some Noted Emigres by the State Street Company. Wonderful things here, although, I know this is a familiar note, they shouldn't be here. I should have a Boston bookcase. Okay, then we have hardcovers of James Blish. A whole bunch of science fiction hardcovers that came to the Brattle Bookshop a couple of years ago, and I grabbed a lot of them, even when they were authors that I wasn't all that fond of. James Blish is a science fiction author I'm not all that fond of. I thought, if you have the hardcovers, maybe that'll be a little bit of a push for you to give the author another try, and I do intend to do that. I just haven't done it yet. This is Black Easter, and there's also Midsummer Century. It was only after I got these, I hauled them a couple of years ago, I inventoried them, looked at them, put them on a shelf with some other hardcover science fiction. Of course, that arrangement didn't last, because here they are all in their lonesome. It was only after that I started getting emails from people saying that those things are hard to find and can be expensive. One person, in response to, I believe, Black Easter itself, one person emailed me and said, God only knows how much money you could make if you actually tried to liquefy your book collection. Because you go through these things, and we all know how you think about it. That the books stand out for you only in terms of how much you enjoyed them, not at all in terms of how much money they're worth. But this person said, you always say that you won't find any deal or bargains in the Brattle sale lot, but I think you're wrong about that. I think that often books do get through the net into the Brattle sale lot for $1 that you could sell easily for $150 online. And if you did that for every book, you'd have a lot of liquidity. I had to write back. I wrote this was 2 years ago that someone wrote like this. I wrote back and said, thanks very much for disagreeing with me in such a friendly way. Why don't more people know how to do that? How did I not know? I had no idea in 2022 how much more acidic disagreement would get in just the last 2 years. But I always like to praise people who disagree with me in the right way as friends. So you can say, I think you're wrong about that. Okay, fine. Even if it comes to something like the Brattle that I know really well. But B, the other point that I made was, well, okay, what would I do with the liquidity? If what you say is true, and I pick, like I'm looking at a mass market paperback in the next bookcase, that probably is rare. I got it for 50 cents. I could probably sell it for $10. And you multiply that over and over again on all the shelves, you get the kind of thing this person was talking about. But I wrote them and said, well, what would I do with the liquidity? I would buy Brattle books. It would just be an endless cycle. So, the important thing is I haven't got to James Blish. I haven't done the reread, the sit down with him that I really, I guess, should. I mentioned this a couple of years ago. All the James Blish fans in the world, all 4 of them, came forward in my emails and said, yeah, he's the greatest. He's the bee's knees. Okay, then I think this was a gift also. Yes, I think this was a gift from one of you. This is from years ago. I praised this and its prequel I praised. And, oh no, I think I found this just at the Brattle. Well, I don't remember. I'd have to check my book journal. But this is by Charles Sevilla, and this is Wilkes on Trial. This is a novel about just a downtrodden group of lawyers, and it's a slice of life novel about what it's like to be a lawyer with imperious judges and stupid opponents and obviously guilty clients, and then the one real case that comes through. Absolutely hilarious prose, just absolutely wonderful. Okay, then we have a UK trade paperback of a thriller. This is a thriller. That I got it just because it was a thriller. And because the cover gave me shivers up my spine. This is The Walking Dead by Gerald Seymour. Is Gerald Seymour a lot like Stuart McBride in that he has a much bigger following in the UK than he does in America? I don't know that I've ever seen any other Gerald Seymour novels than this one. And this guy's holding a gigantic. I've been bitten. I've been zapped by one of those, stung by one of those gigantic, gelatinated scorpions. It's not pleasant at all. You wouldn't want to do that because all it takes is a tiny little pinprick, and suddenly you've got horrible poison coursing through your body. I read this and sort of liked it. I guess I should have looked for Gerald Seymour when I was at the used book superstore last month. I didn't do it because I liked it well enough to maybe read the author again. Now this is something where I didn't just like this; I loved it, and have never looked for any of the other books by this author, which just kills me. The author is Jonathan Holt, and this is book 1 in the Carniviva trilogy. So at least I could find the other 2 books in the trilogy, which I assume are also set in Venice. This is set in Venice. It's called The Abomination. And it's a terrific thriller. Oh, my. Just terrific. When did this come out? Do we know? When did you come out? 2013. So before we were talking to each other, I learned about this from the old Open Letters Monthly. Open Letters Monthly was the online literary journal where I was the managing editor for years and years, for 10 years. And we had a mystery columnist, Irma Heldman. It was wonderful. Her mystery column appeared every month, and she would just do a roundup of mystery novels. And one month she recommended this book, a mystery set in Venice that I'd never heard of, and I checked it out because of her. I imagine a lot of fans, a lot of her readers did the same thing and thought it was fantastic. Just fantastic. Even better than she said it was. Okay, then we have this is another example of a book where I was admonished by people that this is expensive, that I could liquidate this and make money off it. This is Zachary Thomas Dodson, Bats of the Republic. I had this as an advance copy from the publisher, and then I had a finished copy. I think I wrote about it. And then I got rid of everything. I got rid of, God knows how much the hardcover would net me on eBay. This is actually a review copy. This is actually an ARC. It's not mine. It wasn't my original one. And it's a weird, surrealistic historical novel about pre-statehood Texas and about bats. Bats are, because the naturalist is one of the main characters in it. It's actually quite good. It's what I believe has later come to be called maximalist fiction. It's very, very atmospheric and subsuming. The book fills you, but not in a kitschy way, not in a twee way. Okay, great. This is by John Harrison and Kim Nagy. This is the author sent me this copy, which I reviewed. I feel certain I reviewed this somewhere. I did. This is Dead in Good Company, a celebration of Mount Auburn Cemetery, which is one of the famous cemeteries here in Boston that has a great number of famous people buried in it. In all the different ways that happens. when you walk around Mount Auburn Cemetery, some of the time you won't be able to miss the fact that you're walking by a famous person's grave. But then other times you'll be back in a wooded grove. You'll come across a humble little stone, and if you know the history, if you know the person, you'll be amazed that this is where they're buried. And that's what this is. This is Dead in Good Company, which is a history of Mount Auburn Cemetery and all the animals that live there, of course, because Mount Auburn Cemetery is a big sculptured, planned nature space, same as Forest Hill Cemetery, for instance, is just 2 or 3 acres of forested woodland with woods, with graves and cenotaphs and whatnot all around it. But it's empty 99% of the time. It's completely quiet. And so, like in Mount Auburn, a vast ecosystem has sprung up there. This book is mostly about the animals that live in Mount Auburn Cemetery, and only a little bit about the people that are buried there, the famous people that are buried there. I keep meaning, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that guy. But I always want to email the author. I was briefly in touch with the author and also with someone else, so one other person that was connected with this book, and ask for a different copy, maybe a hardcover or something, because I don't want Alan Dershowitz's name on any book that I have. I don't want his name on the front of this book. I think that's the reason why I haven't gone back to this, is because the print copy has a front cover blurb by him. I mean, this came out. When did this come out? 2015. So in 2015, all you knew about Alan Dershowitz is that he was not only willing but eager to defend the most evil people in the world. But you thought he had his limits. You thought it was all just a courtroom theatrics or something like that. But he's the foremost defender of a guy who planned, paid for, orchestrated, launched, and wanted to lead in person an armed insurrection to overthrow the government. Alan Dershowitz is still the foremost defender of that guy. So I don't want his name on the book. I think that's why I haven't got rid of it, but I haven't come back to it either. Whereas it's exactly the type of thing I would go back to. And then we'll finish up both this shelf and this bookcase with this thing, which I never got from the publisher, but I got this a couple of years ago. This is S.J. Paris. This is Heresy. And it is a historical murder mystery starring Giordano Bruno. He's a formidable figure. He's wonderfully evoked in this book, and maybe in this series. I think he has other books. I think there are other books that Bruno stars in by Paris, but I don't have them. This is another example, like with a couple of things on this shelf, where you'd think I'd have gone looking. Considering how enjoyable this was enjoyable enough for me to keep. But this is Bruno coming to the England of Queen Elizabeth and dealing with her extensive spy network in order to solve a murder mystery while still trying to keep his own skin. And of course, readers of the book know that Bruno has a horrifying ending. He doesn't end up keeping himself safe from the inquisitional forces all around him. He doesn't end up doing that. But he does for the course of this book. There have got to be other books in this series. I really should make a mental note to go and look for the other books in that series and the other books in this series. I should make a mental note to do that. I will try to do that so that I get something out of this library tour other than a numb lower half of my body. But anyway, that is our library shelf. That is shelf number 3 of bookcase number 1. Which means that the next bookcase we do, I'm looking at it now, you just can't believe it. It's got slopes the lower slopes have villages on them and streams gambling through them, and then the mid slopes, the vegetation starts to give way, and then there's the upper slopes that have a line of Gore-Tex tourists to mount the summit that has no oxygen and it snows all the time, and there are frozen bodies up there. The next bookcase is hundreds and hundreds of mass market paperbacks. So God only knows how long it will take us to get through just that one bookcase. I will persevere if you will. So I'll wrap this up for now, and then somehow we will do that next bookcase. Somehow. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I mean, transverse books first, then the front shelf. They're all double stacked. Then the back shelf. I don't know. I have no idea. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So I'll wrap this up for now, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.